is the Body Punch Podcast. My name is Naz. So I just finished watching Alistair Overeem and Augusto Sakai. I would put this fight in the category of having two parts. There's some fights out there that have a drastic difference in the first half as compared to the second half. At the beginning of the fight, it looked like Sakai was just hitting Alistair Overeem with flurries of shots. From a visual standpoint, it actually looked like Sakai was hitting him with 20 shots to Alistair's 2 shots. When Sakai would come in with that blitzing style, the blitzing thing that he did, Alistair Overeem was just pushed up against the cage. And at that point, Sakai actually wrapped his hand around the top of the cage, which I don't think it's as big of a deal as the referee was making it to be. But obviously it is against the rules. But at that point, Sakai was hitting him with some great uppercuts, hooks, shots to the body. But if you look at Alistair, he was just kind of shelling up at that point. He was just taking these shots. I think what happens is when you become a veteran of the sport like Alistair Overeem is, a person that is so comfortable with being in the octagon, you're able to make split-second decisions. Consider this. You're just learning how to drive. When you get behind the wheel of a car, you're thinking about everything that you're doing. I'm going to make this left turn. I'm going to make this right turn. I got to stay in my lane. I got to stop at this stop sign. You think about everything. But then later on, once you get your full license, and you're driving down the highway, you don't even think anymore. It just comes naturally to you. It's just a part of life. And Alistair Overeem's life is fighting in an octagon. He's had many kickboxing fights. He's had many UFC fights. He's had many MMA fights in general. This is a real veteran of the sport. And he is comfortable in that octagon. And you can see it because he's able to make decisions at a super fast clip. And in the second half of the fight, like I said at the beginning, the drastic difference was that Alistair Overeem, even though he is a world kickboxing champion and an amazing striker, he experimented with something. He took Sakai to the ground. He was able to do it with relative ease. And he figured, wow, that was super simple. That was really easy. There was not much resistance. And guess what? The next round, bell rings. Guess what he does? He does exactly what he did in the last round. He took him down, mounted him, and got the TKO finish. DC pointed a couple things out that were interesting. Obviously, he's one of the best commentators out there and one of the smartest in the sport. And then when it comes to the wrestling, man, that guy's on another level. And he kept on bringing up the unorthodox method that Alistair Overeem was taking down Sakai. It was more of he was rolling on his back and bringing and mounting him from the top. And he did it twice. Just by reviewing this, it didn't look like Sakai was putting up much resistance. And it seemed like at one point he just allowed it. When Sakai got busted up and was bleeding a lot from his forehead, it's not the craziest blood that we've seen, but it is an irritation. At that point, you could see that he had some frustration building up. He wanted to get Alistair Overeem out there. But then Alistair Overeem had somewhat of a similar cut, maybe even worse, on the hairline of his forehead, where blood was just rushing down. But Alistair Overeem remained calm. He was aware of the situation that he was in. He knew that he had to try something different. And with the amount of time that he's spent training MMA and the amount of time that he's been in MMA fights, it's allowed him to really accentuate his ground game. I think this is an underrated skill of his, because even when this fight started, Sakai and Alistair Overeem were both talking about how this is going to be an amazing Muay Thai fight. But Sakai knew that Alistair Overeem has something different in his back pocket, which is the ground and the grappling game. Sakai mentioned this. He said that he might take me down. Another thing that I noticed, and this is great because I have an outlet to talk about this, Alistair Overeem was super nice to Sakai. Honestly, every time they would break, there was somewhat of a low shot, Alistair Overeem would extend his hand. Say, hey man, I'm sorry. I don't know if this is the right mindset that you need to be in to be a UFC champion. Now, who am I to tell the great Alistair Overeem what to do? But when Alistair Overeem was in his prime, man, he was a killer. It was weird seeing him smile yesterday, let alone help Sakai up. Like at one point, he was trying to help Sakai up, and then I think he remembered where he was, and he goes like, "No, actually, I'm good. You can lay yourself back up." Not saying that this is a major issue. It was just really interesting to see the Demolition Man who conquered people barely smile. I remember videos of him coming down the big runway in Japan, and the boogeyman that he was. Now he's helping guys up at any point and giving them a handshake. I just found that really interesting. Even the commentators brought it up at one point. They said that it's weird to see Alistair Overeem smile. It's weird to see him happy. Maybe that's just the part of his career that he's in. So if we look at Alistair Overeem and we try and determine what's next for him, the thing is that the heavyweight division, the way that it's set up right now, the way that the heavyweight division is working is that a lot of people already have fights. And then you add in the fact that that John Jones is coming. In one of my previous podcasts, I talked about Brock Lesnar coming back. I don't think that's going to happen, but I mean, it just adds a couple sticks to the fire, if you catch what I mean. And then another thing I wanted to mention is that Alistair Overeem's past fights have been very similar. It's either been a two-parter. Most of those fights that I talked about having two parts, Alistair Overeem has been a part of them. Now, let's look at the Rozenstruik fight. The whole fight, Alistair Overeem was dominating him. Rozenstruik got that crazy punch, busted his lip up. We all know the story. But at the beginning of the fight, Alistair Overeem was piecing him up. It wasn't vintage Alistair Overeem. I would say it's Alistair Overeem in the second half of his career. Really being technical and having that calm demeanor that he has. Okay, so then let's move to the next fight. The one with Walt Harris. It was a UFC Fight Night, May 16th. And Walt Harris ended up losing to Alistair Overeem. And Walt Harris could have beaten Overeem. I think he had him mounted at one point. He was piecing him up. The fight could have been stopped. But Alistair Overeem, and this is thanks to the referee, was able to come back and beat Walt Harris. I'm worried for Alistair Overeem when it comes to this. Having these two-parters, either one part he's totally dominating and then loses, the other part where he is getting dominated and then winning. I would love to see more of a consistent fight. But then on the opposing point, as I say this, like I said near the beginning of this podcast, Alistair Overeem is a veteran. He understands how to take advantage of certain situations in a fight. He understands the fact that he needs to make adjustments. And that's what he does in a lot of his fights. He makes adjustments right or wrong. He either keeps on the course, and that's what I think happened in the Rozenstruik fight, where he kept on one course. He kept on going forward because it was working for him. And Rozenstruik made the slight adjustment, even though it was a Hail Mary punch. He made the slight adjustment. But in the Walt Harris fight and the Sakai fight, he knew that he was getting beaten up. So he made the adjustment. In the Sakai fight, it was especially noticeable because he started taking him to the ground, which he's not commonly known for. Alistair Overeem is still a dangerous man. Whoever is going to fight him next is still going to have it in the back of his head that he's fighting the Reem. He's fighting one of the greatest of all time in the heavyweight division. Alistair Overeem is one of those fighters that's seen it all. He's seen it all in kickboxing. He's seen it all in MMA. You can't throw much at Alistair Overeem that he hasn't seen. With all of that knowledge and looking at him physically and seeing how he performed in this fight against Sakai, physically he still looks great. If you look at most 40-year-olds, they don't look like Alistair Overeem. I think that's what a lot of people still need to keep in mind, that the guy is 40. He just fought a guy that was 29. It's a big age difference. And the other thing about the age is that Alistair Overeem is trying to bring this up. Alistair Overeem never talked about retirement. Every single interview he was in, reporters would always ask about his age. And it's a fair question because he's in an advanced age to be an athlete. And they would always ask him, what's going to happen next? Are you going to retire? Is everything okay? I remember after the Francis Ngannou fight, Francis Ngannou knocked him out, sent his head to another planet. People asked him, are you going to retire? Is everything okay? And then he comes back. This is a valid question to ask about Alistair Overeem, and he never brought it up. He never said, hey, I'm going to retire. I'm going to hang up the gloves. All that stuff. He always stayed neutral in the sense, or he would just flat out deny it. So what are you talking about? Of course I'm not going to retire. Look at me. I look great. Alistair Overeem always had this mindset that he could beat anybody in the world. But now, at the age of 40, you're starting to see that he has a lot more, not doubt, but he's thinking about it. He's thinking about the fact that he's a 40-year-old playing a game that is meant for young people. And he knows that this is the last time that he can make a run for that UFC belt that he's never had. Think about it. This guy's had a belt from all of the organizations that he's been in, except for the UFC belt. A guy with that amount of fights that doesn't have a UFC belt is crazy. It's mind-boggling to me. And he needs this belt to cement his career and hold down his legacy. Mind you, he has had many of opportunities, but now he is in that mindset that this is the last one. This is a scary guy. Think about it. At the beginning, when Alistair Overeem was going over those bumps, if someone was piecing him up like that, would he make adjustments like this? I think not. I think because he knows that he's in his advanced age, he needs to put the pedal to the metal. He needs to put that. He needs to go on like 0 to 60. He's got to make decisions. That's what he did in the Sakai fight. He made the decision. He didn't do what he is perceived to be great at. He did what's right for the fight. Took him down to the ground, got the TKO finish in the 5th round. It's great stuff by both fighters. It's a fun fight. The card overall was fun. I mean, the Ovince Preux fight, that knockout, wow. Alonzo Menifield is a great talent. Hope to see him back. He's putting it on. Ovince Preux. I mean, at the beginning of the fight, you know, the fight ended in the second. Ovince Preux didn't present much, but you could see again, just like I was saying about the Overeem fight, the amount of cage time makes a big difference. Alonzo Menifield's only been in there like 3-4 times in a UFC cage. Ovince Preux in 2016 fought for the belt against the greatest of all time in this era. That rub that comes off of fighting a great fighter like that it means a lot, and it shows in a fight like that. And then, oh my God, Michel, Michel is putting on a show. Every time I see him fight, I got to send it to everybody because this is a great example of how to get a crazy amount of fans watching the sport. And think about it, this guy is nuts. He's throwing all these crazy striking maneuvers. Half of them I don't even know what they're called. Jumping off the cage and all that kind of good stuff. And then guess what? He goes belly on back, slams him down, and gets the sub. Two things. First, I don't know if it was a sub. I don't know if he tapped, but does it really matter? No, not really. I mean, it sucks because you get a submission on your record, which sucks, but he was losing the fight anyways. And then second, buddy, I don't think you're going to be fighting Jorge Masvidal anytime soon. Kept on calling him out. That sucks. It really sucks when fighters don't really know the lay of the land. You got to know where you fit in. And that call out at the end of a fight is so precious. You only get that call out 3 times a year, maybe, if you're fighting a lot. You don't get that opportunity a whole lot of times to set yourself up for an amazing fight. Sucks that it kind of got wasted. He kept on calling him out. I haven't seen any activity on Jorge Masvidal's side, but wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't even acknowledge this. Jorge Masvidal is out there for big money fights. In my last podcast, talked about the Nate Diaz Masvidal fight. But whoever Lima fights next is going to be a crazy fight. Obviously, there's going to be fireworks. The guy always puts on a great show. Love that fight. So the card, it was all right. Brian Kelleher was great. The other fights were all right. I mean, the Alistair Overeem fight was great. The knockout, like I said, from OSP, amazing. And by the way, it's great to see that I saw one social media post by the UFC that was talking about OSP just being a submission artist. So it's great to see that he got the KO finish in the second. So fun Saturday night. Great to have UFC over the long weekend. And it gives us great things to talk about. And I really appreciate it. Thank you guys. Wherever you're listening to this, can you please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And it always helps out. I really appreciate you guys listening. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this podcast. I really appreciate it. This has been the Body Punch Podcast. My name is Naz. Bye.